Good evening. Before we're coming into, I'm sorry, let me start that over. Before coming into recovery, I had spent a lifetime chasing after something I thought would fill the aching void in my heart to be happy. I was very self-centered. I was always on my mind. I was stubborn, didn't believe I needed anyone to help me. I believed I had the power to fix everything so that everyone would be happy. This led to a fierce temper, a long list of resentments, believing I had every right to be angry. I had tried all the ways of the world to fill that aching void and only found temporary happiness. What a crazy mixed up way of thinking and living. I had no idea back then that Jesus and recovery was going to change all of this and give me a new life. Hi, my name is Sue, and I am a grateful Christian in recovery for codependency, anger, and compulsive spending. Please join me in prayer. Father God, I empty myself of me. Fill me with you and your spirit so that I can be used to share what it is that you would have me share. I thank you for this journey that I have been through, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, because you have made me into the person I am today. In Jesus' name, amen. I was born in April of 1966 in Detroit, Michigan, to teenage parents. They had been coerced into marriage when my mom became pregnant with me. Together, they had 3 more kids in the next 4 years. I'm the oldest. I have a brother and 2 sisters. And when I look back now, our childhood, for the most part, was filled with a lot of adventure, and we did not lack any material thing. To our frustration, my mom always made sure we had something healthy to eat, no sugar-coated cereals, lots of fresh veggies and fruits that we would spend the summer picking and canning that she would store in our fruit cellar for the winter. My dad worked nights, and being so young, the neighborhood kids thought he was the cool dad. I grew up feeling as if I didn't belong in my family. So I was usually at my grandparents' house when I was younger or out with my friends when I was older. The relationship I had with my mom was tumultuous. We fought all the time. My dad was the disciplinarian, and the words, "Wait until your father gets home," filled me with great fear. He seemed to always be upset with me because I seemed to always upset my mom. At a very young age, I began desperately trying to please him. And I held tight to those moments, those rare moments when he would tell me he was proud of me or that he loved me. I was scared to death of the man, but somehow he was my favorite parent. And I believed only he loved me. In 1984, they decided they were moving to Florida. I had just graduated high school, and staying behind in Michigan wasn't an option or a possibility. I had not been allowed to have a job until I turned 18, which was 2 months earlier. The moment I arrived in Florida, they handed me the want ads and told me to go find a job. I started working full-time in bookkeeping at a lumberyard. And I was still living at home and paying rent to my parents. But having an income of my own for the first time in my life gave me the ability to buy things for myself, which was a great feeling, one that I sought to replicate for most of my adult life, which then led to credit card debt. I remember my first credit card was to Burdines. Yes, I'm that old. I had begun dating a young man at the lumberyard, and on our first date, we had sex. And believing it was love, I had convinced myself he was the one. Sorry. And at 19, I found myself pregnant. I had mixed emotions, felt alone, didn't feel I had anyone to turn to. And when I told him I was pregnant, he sternly told me that I was going to have an abortion or he would leave me. And since I couldn't bear the thought of life without him, I had an abortion. Something inside me changed that day, and I remember thinking to myself, now you've done it. There's no taking this back. I had become so talented at hiding my pain, believing somehow that I deserved it. He was an angry alcoholic, but he was also a sweet man when he wasn't drinking. We got married 3 years later in March of '88, and a couple months later on Memorial Day, I realized I was pregnant again. I was so scared. But his reaction this time was different. He was excited and ran to tell everyone that I was pregnant. I felt joy, but also fear and confusion. So I just kept that inside, along with all the other pain that I had experienced in my life. We would have two children together, a son and a daughter. And soon we had a house in Boca Raton, new cars, every imaginable toy for the kids, dogs, cats, fish, turtles, hamsters. We took many vacations a year, often going to Disney World for the weekend or camping with friends. The kids played baseball, football, softball, soccer, gymnastics, cheerleading. Our lives were pretty full. From the outside, everything looked great. Despite all of this, I felt I was a failure, especially when my husband continued to drink and got upset, yelling and punching holes in the walls next to my head. He would always buy me a nice gift afterwards. And I was buying myself nice gifts too. My shopping was out of control. I would make purchases and hide them and the mounting bills. I didn't realize that I was trying to fill the aching hole in my soul with stuff. I thought to myself, if only he would quit drinking and smoking pot, everything would be okay. I begged and pleaded and tried to bargain with him to quit. He eventually agreed to counseling when I threatened to leave. We went to the first counseling session together, and then he went to the counselor alone, and I went to mine. However, he continued to drink. He even took the kids to the bar when I worked late. And when I asked him what the counselor had said about his drinking, he told me that the counselor told him he needed to have this time to unwind and that was his time drinking. I was furious. I thought the counselor was on my side and would tell him to quit. And I called that counselor and gave him a piece of my mind. I was angry. And the counselor told me my husband was depressed and was using alcohol as medication. And he would need to recognize that it wasn't the alcohol that he needed. He recommended that I go to Al-Anon. But I thought to myself, what? Is this guy an idiot? I don't have a problem. So, of course, I didn't go. After being what I considered to be the perfect wife and mother, I sought love outside our marriage because I felt I needed someone to save me. This only added to my guilt and shame. In April of 2003, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And by now, I was a hospice nurse and knew that his cancer was a terminal diagnosis. He did finally quit drinking, but died 9 months later in January, the day after our son's 15th birthday. I was torn between the relief of being removed from the abusive alcoholic situation, the guilt of his death that I dreamed of many times, and failing as a wife and mother. which only intensified as I watched my children grieve. I didn't allow myself to grieve. Up until then, my spiritual life was sketchy. I was brought up going to a Catholic church. We didn't go to church every Sunday, but definitely on Easter and Christmas. I never understood what church was all about. I only saw it as an obligation. In my eyes, God was an angry man, keeping a list of all my wrongs and punishing me, which was proven by the fact that Jesus hung on the cross in the front of the church, and he didn't even do anything wrong. My first husband and I got married in the church because it pleased our parents. Our kids were baptized in the church, again, because it pleased our parents. After his diagnosis, a friend took me to a non-denominational church, and the sermon was on the man born blind. In this story, Jesus heals a man born blind by giving him sight. When the religious leaders asked the man how it happened, after asking everyone else, including his parents, because they wanted to trap Jesus by accusing him of being a sinner, the man's response in John 9:25 is, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." And just like the man, I was finally able to see the love of Jesus. I went to the altar that day and surrendered my life to Jesus. That was 23 years ago. As a new Christian, the verse I prayed was Psalm 51:10. "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." Inside, I was still the same person, only now I believe Jesus loved me. And I wanted to change, I just didn't want to face my past. I had soon remarried because I could no longer afford to live on just my income, and I believed I had the chance to be the perfect wife. I was working full-time, going to church, and I was involved, but I still didn't like myself. I still had a terrible anger problem. No matter how far I ran from myself, I was right there. Why was my life such a mess? Around this time, my son became very angry with me about selling his grandmother's house, and said and did some things that were awful, like threatening to put a bullet in my head. He told me he never wanted to see or talk to me again, and I was devastated. I cried, "Why is this happening to me?" I now understand that he too needs healing of his hurts. I had heard of Celebrate Recovery. I knew I had hurts, habits, and hang-ups. So I first attended Celebrate Recovery at McGregor Baptist and couldn't wait for the step study to start, thinking it would cure it all and I'd be done. But that first step study only scratched the surface. I later started attending Grace Church and Celebrate Recovery here in 2018. One of my shortcomings, I found out, was that I was stubborn. The plus side of that is I was determined I was going to find the healing spoke of in the testimonies at Celebrate Recovery, so I kept coming back. My life began to change. And one practice that has had a big impact in my life is spending time daily with Jesus, journaling, Bible reading, and praying. And I mentioned earlier that I had remarried. Guess what? This husband, too, was an alcoholic and addict. But I didn't beg him to get into recovery. I began to focus on my recovery and healing me. I felt as if I were sucker punched when he told me he wanted a divorce. He was accusing me of spending too much time at church and the gym. And at first, I begged and pleaded to work things out, but I stopped, surrendered it to God, and in the end, we amicably divorced. In my lifetime, I have carried a heavy load of shame, guilt, and resentments. And each time I have done a step study and do my 4th step inventory, followed by step 5, the load gets lighter. Jesus has been gentle with me, revealing only what I am emotionally mature enough to handle, while also helping me mature emotionally. At CR, I had learned that a resentment is an unmet expectation. When I did something for someone expecting a specific outcome and that didn't happen, I formed a resentment toward them. That wasn't fair to them. When my first husband continued to drink despite me trying to be the perfect wife and do everything, I resented him. I couldn't change him. I came to realize I could only change me. Revelations 21:5 says, "And the one sitting on the throne said, 'Look, I am making all things new.'" My dad was a big talker when I was growing up. He would always brag about how any boy that wanted to date me would have to go through him. Yet when my date, who was 7 foot tall, had to duck coming in the front door, showed up to take me to a dance, my dad didn't ask a single question. His only response was to shake his hand and say, "Have her home whenever you want." Where was my protector? I was crushed and felt worthless. But God redeemed that. When a sweet man who was going to become my 3rd husband asked me out, he asked if he could court me, stating sex was off the table and we would seek God's will and determine if we should pursue a relationship. On our first date, he brought me flowers, took me to dinner, then took me home. He walked me to the door and asked for another date. I remember sitting on my couch after that date, all alone and smiling. There was no regret, no walk of shame. That was just the beginning. And I can tell you, I have never felt so cherished in my life. Mike and I will be married 4 years this May. My rock bottom came while I've been in recovery. My daughter had also cut me out of her life. After my granddaughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes just before her 3rd birthday, and I entered a deep depression, I didn't know if I could live without them in my life. I'd already lost my son, and I contemplated suicide daily. I felt like I had done everything for my daughter and granddaughter. I babysat her every day so my daughter could work. I bought her everything I thought she needed, even though she never asked for it. But I had not allowed my daughter and her boyfriend to be her parents. I tried to fix everything for them. Wow, sounds like a little bit like a martyr, doesn't it? Thank God for recovery meetings, my sponsor, my husband, and for the 12 steps. The rest of the story is that, like the man born blind, I was blind, but now I see. I could finally see how my codependency was not healthy. Today, the relationship with my daughter has been restored. It is different, but so much better. I don't tell my daughter how to parent. I don't buy everything I think they might need. I allow them to be the parents and to figure things out. And if they need help, they ask. And if we are able, we help. This healing has only happened because of recovery. I mentioned earlier that the relationship between my mom and myself was tumultuous. And I came to understand that I had another resentment because of an unmet expectation. Growing up, I wanted her to love me in a way that she wasn't capable of. She did love me in her own way, which was different than what I wanted or expected, and I resented her for it. Neither of us knew any better. I had said some terrible things to my mom. And before recovery, I believed I had every right to say those things because in my eyes, she hurt me. Thanks to steps 8 and 9, I was able to make an amends to my mom. I had no idea what to expect. Part of me wanted her to apologize, but God had another plan. When I made my amends, she smiled, hugged me, and said, "I told your dad you'd eventually come around." What a humbling moment. When my mom showed me God's love and just hugged me and told me she loved me, even after all the horrible things I had said and done. So how did I get from there to here? In a nutshell, I would say it truly is through Jesus, as he uses the program of recovery and my willingness to work the steps to heal me. It really is through Celebrate Recovery, small groups, Al-Anon, yes, I'm going, the 12 steps, and service. I have learned that the 12 steps can be used in every area of my life. My family, my friends, work, finances, food, shopping. So I am grateful for the gift of recovery. And speaking of gratitude, my eyes have been opened to see the gift of gratitude. Whatever I focus on becomes greater in my life. When I focus on what I am grateful for, something as simple as being grateful the dog needs to be walked, I can see that I can get in some exercise. My thoughts of gratitude for Jesus grow, and I am at peace and feel content. When adversity comes, the gratitude overpowers it. In John 16:33, we read that Jesus said, "I have told you these things, so that in me you will have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Because of recovery, I finally understand that Jesus knew this world was tough. And even though he knew he would be put to death, he came to give us the words and directions we need to make it through this life until we are with him in heaven. In him I have found the love my heart has ached for. In Matthew 18:20, Jesus says, "Where 2 or more are gathered in my name, I am there in their midst." Sharing in small groups is where the healing started for me. I realized I wasn't terminally unique and that there are others out there going through the same things, thinking they are alone. In John 14:27, Jesus tells us, "Peace I leave you, my peace I give you. Not as this world do I give to you. Do not let your heart be troubled. Do not let it be fearful." Each time I have laid down a heavy burden of shame and guilt that I thought was mine to keep, Jesus took it, and in its place, he gave me peace, just like he said he would. As I mentioned, I'm a hospice nurse, and in hospice, we recognize there are 3 areas of pain in someone's life, which is why we not only have nurses, but we have social workers and chaplains. Physical pain is the most obvious and the one most people think of when they think of hospice. But there is also the emotional and spiritual pain. Don't wait until you're eligible for hospice care to work on the spiritual healing that is available to you for free of charge through Jesus in Recovery. There is recovery available no matter what pain you're experiencing. Keep coming back. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, one day at a time. Thank you for letting me share.